Today I will go over the 3 blocks that allow you to activate the motors on your robot. They are called the move block, the motor block, and the record/play block. The move block and the motor blocks are the ones you'll use most often to control your robot, because they are the ones that will allow you to input certain distances and have your robot run that far. The move block is the one that is most useful. It allows you to run both your drive motors at the same speed, distance, and everything, and just set it once. You have the ports down here, which you can set to your drive motors, depending on whether your ports are A and B, or B and C, or A and C, or any combination. The default is B and C, which I generally use. It is easy if you get into the habit of building robots with drive motor B and C, and then using the A motor as a motor for a different accessory. Then you can set the direction, forward, backward, and stop. Now, forward and backward is not relative to your robot. It is relative to the motor. So depending on how you mount your motors, backward might actually be forward, which I somehow manage to do almost every time I build a robot. Then you have steering. Again, you can set the motors, which are your drive motors, and your right and left motor. This is not a very accurate way to steer, because you can't set an exact distance to run the motors, but it is useful for slight steering, and it will give you a little indication right here of how much the robot is supposed to turn, although this doesn't indicate that it will turn completely around. Next, you have the power. This can be set to any level from 100 to 0. Now the power level is relative to the battery level. Obviously 100% at 9 volts is going to be a lot faster than 100% at 7.5 or 8 volts. So if you want a fast robot, you can set it to 100%, but I find it easier to control steering if the power is lower. Next, you have duration. This can be done in unlimited, degrees, rotations, or seconds. Unlimited, the robot will run forever, which is a lot more useful than you would think. Degrees sets it to certain degrees. You can there's obviously 360 degrees in a rotation, and that gives you a much finer, a much more accurate reading. And then rotations, which you can use as well. Seconds, you can set the seconds here, but seconds are not very accurate, because depending on the motor level, your wheel size, the battery level, it will go slower or faster and go farther in 1 second than it would normally. I use degrees most often just because it's the most accurate, and it allows me to, there's no limit to how much I can set it to. I can set it to 13,000 degrees, or that was 130,000 degrees, but there's no limit. And then next action, which would be brake or coast. Again, I generally don't mess with this because braking allows a much more accurate navigation between points. There are a couple exceptions. When the direction is set to stop, it ignores duration, power, and steering. As you can see, they are grayed out. And when duration, is set to unlimited, it ignores the next action. So, and also, this is a little glitch, but next action is ignored. Although it's not grayed out, it is ignored when the steering does not equal 0. This is a glitch in the NXT-G 1.0 and 1.1, so it may not apply to you if you're using 2.0. Next, we have the single motor. Again, you can only set one motor here, so you have your port you can pick, but you can't pick multiple ones. Again, you have your direction. And you have your action, which, if I go over here to duration and change it to something other than unlimited, because action is ignored when duration is set to unlimited, you can set it to constant, ramp up, or ramp down. Constant means the motor just gets up to the speed you want it to as fast as it can, whereas ramp up, it takes a little longer to get up to speed, and ramp down, it slows down as it nears the end of its move. This is helpful if you want a smoother transition between motions. Ramp up and ramp down will let you do that. Again, you can set the power. I generally use single motors for turning. Leave one still and turn one motor and your robot will turn. So like I mentioned earlier, I can set this to a lower power and it will turn more slowly but more accurately. This control motor power allows you to control the motor power from here. And then the duration, like we said earlier, unlimited, degrees, rotation in seconds. And then this is unique to the single motor move, wait for completion. If you deselect that, notice next action grays out, but when the flow of the program goes from left to right, and it waits for each block to be completed. But if you deselect that, the motor will run while the next step is being done, whether that be waiting for a sensor, another move block, or something else. This is very useful for having your robot spin on a dime. You can deselect this wait for completion, have one motor run forward and the other motor run backward using separate blocks. Deselect wait for completion on the first one and it will spin your motor on the dime. Next is the record play block. This one is fun to mess around with a new robot design with. You can select the motors to record, and you can select whether to record or play. Name the set of moves. This is like a variable name that you will give to the specific rotations that you move the motors. And then you set a time duration. And during that time duration, the robot will be expecting you to move the motors by yourself, and it will then mimic those back when you select play. Notice play, it grays out everything, but it does have down here file, so you can pick different files. So like if you recorded move 1, and then move 2, and then move 3, well, you could play those back in any order through the file selection. These are the three basic ways to activate your motors on your robot. The move block, the motor block, and the record play.